One of the most upsetting bits of information in this reflections issue to me, in fact, I was so disturbed by it, even though I sort of knew not the dimension, how bad it was. I had to just get up and walk around and I couldn't do anything else. And that was an article about our giving. We do give more in dollars, I believe, than anyone else in the world, than any other country in the world, but that we give a very small percentage compared to other countries. And what bothered me even more is how little American Christians give. The median Christian giver in this country gives now, how much do you think? I mean, I was taught it should be 10%, or now we'd say any percent, but a percent, not just if I have some left over. The median Christian giver contributes 0.62%, about 0.5% of income. I suspect that the Jewish population and the Muslim population are more generous, since it is a pillar of Islam, and it is also, our Jewish friends are very, very known to be generous. And I don't know what we in leadership in the Christian tradition need to do about it, but I am quite horrified, as I hope you are too. Now that I've sort of dropped that little bomb, what would the rest of you like to say?
Well, I think it seems to me that some of these themes come together, because I think today I certainly believe that geography is important and it expands from our own self, but particularly with social media and television, I think people do link with the struggles that are going on. I can tell you that my kids at the breakfast table get up in the morning and they say, "Is Gaddafi still there?" So there is an awareness of what's going on. We have staff on the ground in Egypt and Tunisia and Libya, and they're interacting, but they're also blogging, they're tweeting, Facebook. So I think that, and we certainly know the role of the Google guy in Egypt, so that this whole world is so interconnected today, and it's certainly connected in terms of philanthropy and resources. I think.
So you're giving us an encouraging word. Is that it?
Well, I think that it's a little bit like I think it's the parable of the mustard seed that's important. Yesterday we received a $25,000 grant from Los Angeles, not known as a center of philanthropy, although the center of activism, from an Indian American individual, came out of the blue, and it will not only sustain, it will develop our program and lead to, we believe, some additional larger scale government assistance. There's two major forms of participating in development. One is private philanthropy, and there's plenty of good groups here today that are active in that area, and the other is government philanthropy, if I can use that word, development assistance, and the two need to go together. I think we do need to be challenged. I think we certainly need to be doing better in both scales, both on the private side and on the governmental side.
Well, certainly we need a partnership, and those who think just one or the other is the answer, I think all of us in this room would object to that. Katherine, did you have something?
One of the most powerful messages that cuts across all of the religious traditions in one way or another is the sense of the value, the gift of each individual, and the human dignity, the love of neighbor. With that, I think somehow where we need to focus is on translating these horrors and the numbers into human faces and families. What does maternal mortality mean? What does child mortality mean? So, of course, it is the hitting people in the face with the enormity of the problems and its poignancy and appealing to people's hearts. But I think it has to come with this sense of hope that these are problems that can be overcome, that have been overcome in many places, that we've overcome them in this country. And then, of course, somewhere tailing at the end is the fear factor, that if we don't, there is no world for our children and grandchildren, because there is no safety in a divided world where people are angry and unjust. So we're balancing this sense of humanity, the sense of hope, the sense of conscience that comes from being part of a family. And then somewhere we need to convey this sense that it is not a viable, sustainable, safe world unless we are able to work for justice and development, unless people have jobs, go to school, and have hope.
Thank you, Katherine. I appreciate what you and others have said in writing and in your words to encourage us that, yes, this is a new day, and we can see the progress made on the Millennium Development Goals, and so we can have hope. This is not hopeless. Melinda?
Thanks. I wanted to maybe end with a side on hopeful side as well on the and on the political side. I mean, I was pretty harsh about that perhaps earlier, but I had a meeting with the new chair of the House Financial Services Committee, which is Spencer Backus, who is a Republican from Birmingham, Alabama, with a dozen faith leaders from Birmingham, had a meeting with him, and he has been a stalwart champion of debt relief initiatives because the faith community in Birmingham reached out to him. And in 1999, David Beckmann was very involved in that as well, and so we were strategizing with him. I did say, I know that this is a different fiscal environment. This is a challenging time, and he said, it is challenging, but we can make the argument so they can hear them. He said, because it's so much more efficient and effective dollar for dollar to be doing this type of foreign assistance than sending our military when there's instability and so forth. So he really strongly feels like we can make that national security argument, and I think it's important to educate, as Ambassador Hall said, the new members. And one of the things he suggested to us is really most of the new members of Congress are connected to faith communities. There's a large percentage of them that are Catholic, he pointed out, and that he said get to them with members of the faith community in their districts and really start to make this argument now so there isn't a knee-jerk reaction against it as we move forward, new legislation for debt relief and so forth. So I want to kind of commend us to do that education work, and that getting the faith community involved through faith leaders initiatives, as well as getting congregations involved. We have congregations programs that Bread for the World also does to get congregations educated on these issues to move some of the new members.
Thank you, Melinda. We are going to close with Dean Harry Attridge, but before, so you don't get the last word, but the second to last word, David.
Well, since Melissa talked about Chairman Spencer Backus, I've got to tell you that he got involved in poverty issues thanks to really two of his constituents in Birmingham, a lady named Pat Pelham and her friend Elaine Van Cleve. This was back in the late 90s, and Pat was a young mother who, in her prayers one morning, felt compelled to do something about Africa. And her minister suggested that she get her church involved in Bread for the World. She did that in a tremendously effective way, began to engage Representative Backus. He's now a close friend, actually, and he's very candid that he never thought about Africa in his life. But Pat and Elaine and other friends, constituents in Birmingham, drew him into the issue. When the Jubilee campaign really got started in 1999, he was in a key position. They came to Washington to see him. They talked about, at that time, I think it was 30,000 kids who were dying every day from preventable causes. They talked about that. that gripped his heart. He became the most effective advocate in the U.S., has over the years, the most effective advocate for debt relief in the U.S. Congress. He's worked on primary education in Africa and around the world. He voted for the Child Nutrition Act that came before Congress dealing with nutrition programs in this country in December. He's really got a heart for these things. But it really started with constituents who, with Pat Pelham, listening to God's call to her and using the power that we have as people who live in this country to change history for poor people. And I'm also quite hopeful. The world's made progress against poverty. Over the last 10 years, in fact, public attitudes toward poor people in our country and around the world have become more supportive of government efforts to reduce poverty. I think we have a real chance right now in the midst of the recession to get our country and its government to get more serious about poverty than we have ever been. And that's what God's calling us to do this Lent, no question.
Thank you, David. Dean Harold Attridge, also professor of New Testament at Yale Divinity School.
Thank you, Linda. It's clear, as this panel and presentation tonight have indicated, that the Christian faith indicates that we have an obligation to feed the hungry, to give drink to the thirsty, to clothe the naked, to shelter the homeless. Indeed, our ultimate relationship with our Creator and Redeemer depends on how we take that obligation. Our Jewish and Christian brothers and sisters have similar ways of framing the obligation that comes from religious faith. For us Christians, Lent is a time to reflect, to get sharper focus, and to engage in action, as Congressman Coons said. I join Senator Coons and the panel here tonight in calling on all our alums, all our friends, and all people of faith in this country to engage during this time of Lent in a period of reflection. Reflection on not simply personal sin, but on the social sin that is poverty. Reflection not simply on the fact of that sin, but also on its causes and the ways in which it can be dealt with. And then I call upon us all to act by giving generously, to act by connecting with all of the organizations, or at least some of the organizations represented here tonight, who are engaged in the war on poverty. And finally, to engage in vigorous public discourse about what our obligations are as a nation to deal with the reality of poverty. Yale Divinity School stands ready to help that conversation move forward during the course of the next 40 days through our website, through Facebook, and through Twitter, all sorts of interesting new media. We'll be engaging in highlighting best practices and highlighting what's being done by our friends and our partners in this whole effort. So I invite you to sign up for Facebook and join us in that brave new electronic world. While you're doing so, let's all also give thanks to those who've made this program possible tonight, to Senator Coons and to our distinguished panel, to Reverend Lader for giving the leadership on this panel tonight, and to all of the staff of the International Relief and Development Agency and Yale Divinity School who pulled this panel together. Thank you one and all for being here with us tonight. And thank you all.